Seems like no matter where I go these days, more and more businesses are asking for tips. I'm going to share with you my thoughts on who you should tip and when and how much. I know we all feel pressure. They bring those little machines at restaurants, pre-tip amounts, 15%, 20%, 25%. Keep watching this video. In the end, let's talk about when not to tip. So who and when should you tip? Here are some top tipping rules that you might consider the next time you're out and about. First of all, don't feel pressured. Get over it. They can ask, you don't have to tip them. Again, you should be tipping based on good service. That's my opinion, not just because you're somewhere or someplace. Let's start with full service restaurants. I go out to eat once a week, and the norm there is you tip obviously based on the bill that you have. Now again, the servers in most full service restaurants in the US, they don't make a minimum wage, they make a lower wage. Back in the day when my kids were servers, it was like $2.35 an hour. It was a small amount of money. And so they counted on the tips to get them to a decent wage. And usually they did a lot better than minimum wage. And so I think the norm has been, 18 to 20% for full service restaurant tips. Again, if you get really bad service, you got to think about, was it the server's fault or the kitchen's fault? The server shouldn't be penalized for a restaurant that doesn't do a nice job getting food out of the kitchen. If you do get bad service, again, you should let the manager know. It may not be the server's fault. And if it's not the server's fault, let the manager know that as well. So again, full service restaurants, 18 to 20% is my norm. And again, don't tip on sales tax and credit card fees. So personal care and service workers, a hair salon, a barber, I think the higher end type places, you go to a barber, 10% tip, a hair salon, 10 to 20% tip. You get food delivery, a pizza guy or Uber Eats, maybe 10% tip is pretty appropriate there. And again, taxi or ride shares, Ubers or Lyft, again, I think you're 10 to 20% tip for those services. This is one I don't do very often, but again, I think if you're staying in a hotel for going longer than a night, 2 or 3, and you want good service and they've done a nice job of making up your room and taking care of your things, I think it's appropriate to tip a dollar or two per night, per person, for good hotel service. So think about that the next time you're in a hotel. I'm not so sure if you're staying at just a typical quick motel for the night, while you're traveling. It won't hurt, but you could do that as well. And in the end, when you leave the money, don't forget to leave a little note for the housekeeper to let them know they did a nice job, and obviously to let them know that the money's for them. I think a lot of people don't do this, so it might catch them by surprise when they find a few dollars sitting on the dresser. Let's talk about those little tipping machines at restaurants for a minute. They bring you the little display. It's got pre-tip amounts in there, 10, 15, 20, 25%. Normally it's on the higher end, like 15, 20, 25%. Don't feel bad about selecting the right amount for you and your budget. No reason to select 25% if you can't afford it. That said, if the service was phenomenal, you loved your server, and you really feel they deserve extra, 25% is certainly appropriate. So avoid tipping anxiety. It really is up to you. Just because they bring you the machine, just because they ask for a tip, you need to get past that and tip what you think is right, what you think is fair, what you're comfortable with. Remember, you did make the choice to go out to the restaurant. Get rid of the anxiety, tip what's right for you, and be comfortable with that. So I think in general, that's the gist. We talked at the beginning of the video about when not to tip. I think there's lots of services that we receive. When I get takeout food at a McDonald's, they don't expect a tip. I feel the same way when I go to a coffee shop. If they're pouring me a coffee, again, I don't feel obligated to tip there. If I'm just doing takeout food at a restaurant, maybe $1 or $2 for them bringing it out to the car, but not the typical 15 to 20%. Other places to not tip. Again, your typical home providers, your housekeepers, your lawn maintenance guys. I think it's great to give them holiday gifts and surprises every now and again, right? A bonus gift versus a weekly tip. You pay your babysitter, you don't really tip your babysitter. I think the younger generation maybe tips a little bit more than the older generation. Maybe they tip more, maybe they tip less. Again, I don't have a good feel for that. I'm not in the service industry. So the bottom line is tip where it's expected. Think twice about tipping where it's not expected. You've got to be comfortable with the tip amount. So do what's right for you in the end. Again, leave some comments. This could be a good conversation. I'm curious. And subscribe and watch some of these other videos on savings and your finances.